Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Rochelle, and I am the Home Garden Program Manager at Verde. And I'm going to present to you today our Home Garden Workshop for July, and our topic is pollination. So let's get started. All right, a brief overview of our topics today are, first we'll be starting by reviewing what we learned in June, then followed by our nutrition and health topic, which is going to be a review of the last 6 months. And typically, if we were in person, we would do more interactive asking questions and such, but since we are still doing remote learning, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments or to email your coordinator and ask questions that way, and we would be happy to get back to you. In addition, our garden topic this month is on pollination, and our climate change topic is on saving the pollinators, and our action step is how to create a welcoming space for pollinators. And then finally, we'll end with some announcements. Okay. So in June, our health topic was water. And so we talked about hydration and our body's different needs for how much water we need to consume each day. And for men, it was a little bit more than for women. And we also said that our main takeaway is to tell if you're hydrated is to check the color of your urine. If it is clear or light yellow, then that means your body is well hydrated. However, if it's a darker orange or even brown, that would mean that you are either very dehydrated and need to drink water, and or have a medical emergency and need to contact your doctor. If you're ever having brown urine, that is a serious issue. It means your kidneys or something is not able to filter out the toxins in your urine, and so you would need to seek medical help for that. But in general, you can tell, if your urine is light in color, then you are well hydrated. Other signs would be how thirsty you feel. If your skin is dry, sometimes that's an indicator of dehydration, or just lightheaded, dizziness, and that type of thing. And our recipe last month that we talked about was infusing water. Some people don't like the taste of plain water, and so by infusing it, not only are you able to stay well hydrated, but you also receive the benefits of vitamins and minerals from the vegetables and fruits that you infuse into your water. And so if you want to learn more about that, go back and watch our June topic, and we also have a recipe that we can send you. In the garden, we also talked about water, and so we talked about how to tell if your plants are hydrated, if they've been receiving enough water or if they're not. As you can see, the 3 photos at the top of the screen, where there is this sad smiley face of a raindrop. This first photo is a wilted leaf. This plant does not have enough water, and so it would need you to water immediately. The middle plant is an example of a plant that is receiving enough water. You can see the color of the plant leaves are green. There's no wilting, there's no dried edges, and so this plant is receiving adequate water and nutrients from the soil. And finally, over here on the right, this plant leaf is actually being overwatered. And the way we can tell is that the leaf is not wilted, but it's turning yellow. And additionally, the edges of the leaf are turning brown and dying. And this oftentimes means that the roots have too much water saturation, and so they're not able to get oxygen into the veins of the plant, and it can't spread to out to the leaves, and so it starts dying from the furthest point out, slowly back towards the the stem of the plant. And so when you see this, you want to decrease your watering frequency and pinch off any dead leaves that are affecting the plant. In addition, we talked about water conservation. And so what things can we do to conserve water? Some of this includes, let me see if I can hide this. There we go. Some of this includes like rain barrels we talked about, so collecting the rainwater from your rain spout at your home, and I showed you an example of this rain barrel, which just uses gravity. There's no pump or anything, and the water flows through a hose to the garden, or you can just, when you turn on the faucet, you can fill up a watering can and water your plants that way, and that way you have, you know, several gallons, many gallons of water to that you're saving and not going to waste. Otherwise, it would just, you know, go on the cement and water either weeds or nothing that you're actually trying to grow. So this way, we're reusing water that is free and already available. Some reasons why it's important to conserve water that we talked about last month include preparing for future droughts, saving money, as you know, the less we are overusing our water, the more affordable it's going to be, because like any resource, supply and demand, if there's a low supply but a high demand, that's going to make the price go higher. And so because we know, especially here in California, that water we can go through seasons of drought, and it's a resource that is limited. We really need to conserve so that the prices don't skyrocket, and so that there is enough water for recreation, and just preserving the environment, preventing fires and that sort of thing. So there's lots of reasons to conserve water. And again, if you need a refresher on that, go back and watch our June lesson. Moving on, we are going to talk about our health and nutrition topic. So this is a basic review of the last 6 months. The main goal of Valley Verde is to bring you greater access to organic vegetables with the aim of increasing our community's food security and improving health. So do you recall the average distance that food travels from the farm to your plate? So if you remember, it is 1,500 miles. So that is the average distance from the farm where it's grown, that it travels to the grocery store or a processing plant, then to the grocery store, and then where you drive, pick it up from the store and bring it home, prepare it, and put it on your plate. So the average distance is 1,500 miles. When you grow your own food, not only are you positively impacting the environment by reducing carbon emissions, you are also developing a sustainable and low-cost way to access nutritious food. Organic food is grown without the use of chemical pesticides, fertilizers, or insecticides, all of which are known to cause cancer in humans. We also learned about how to read the nutrition label, being aware of portion sizes and ingredients being consumed. Finally, we learned what produce labels mean. Numbers starting with 4 on the produce label are commercially grown and usually sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. So this means you have a potential of ingesting those chemicals, which over time can lead to cancer. Numbers starting with the number 9 are organic foods, and they contain no pesticides or herbicides. Finally, label numbers starting with 8 have been genetically modified. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go back to our earlier lessons where we talked about this. This was in our, I believe in our first month in January. And we talked about this and why genetically modified food is not the best choice for us. Many reasons. Okay, moving on. So then January was our big overview, and then I'm just going to touch on a brief health topic from each of the remaining 5 months. So in February, we talked about the My Plate model for including all the essential food groups in our diet, as well as the proportions that we should be eating. Notice how fruits and vegetables take up half the plate, while grains and protein take up the other half. And there are slightly more grains than protein and slightly more vegetables than fruits. A small portion of dairy can be included on the side. Try to keep this diagram in mind while preparing and serving food to your family. In March, we learned about the different types of carbohydrates, including simple carbohydrates, which are sugars, natural sugars for quick bursts of energy, like found in fruit, and then complex carbohydrates like grains, which are slower to digest and release energy more slowly in your body. So if you are about to do, working in your garden and you need a quick burst of energy, you eat something that has carbohydrate sugars like a piece of fruit, and that's going to give you quick energy. But if you're maybe going for a hike and it's going to be a longer, maybe several miles, you want to eat something with complex carbohydrates, so something that's multi-grain and going to be a slower release so that you have energy for the duration of your hike. And then finally, fiber is a form of carbohydrates found in vegetables primarily, and this is going to keep your digestive system clean and regular. It's very important to get enough fiber in your diet. But if you have not had a lot of fiber in your diet, it's important to introduce fiber slowly. Otherwise, you might have some uncomfortable side effects. In April, we learned about gardening for our mental, physical, and social health. And as you can see on the diagrams, there are many benefits to gardening, whether it's stress relief or improved memory, to the physical benefits of having a lower body mass index, slightly less weight, decreasing stress, and decreasing your heart rate, and the social benefits as well, where it promotes healthier patterns of social functioning, improved group cohesiveness, so you are more amicable and more able to do teamwork with others, and it just really improves increased and improved social integration. Okay, and then in May, we talked about protein and how protein is essential to our diets as humans. Protein is made up of 20 amino acids, including 8 essential amino acids. And this means that we must ingest these amino acids in our diet because our bodies cannot make them on their own. We learned about complete proteins, often found in animal products such as meat, cheese, and milk, and vegetable protein. Vegetable proteins often need to be eaten in combination to form complete proteins. So they, by themselves, they might be an incomplete protein, but when eaten together, they form a complete protein. And examples you can see in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. If you combine, the classic beans, black beans, and rice, that is going to form a complete protein, as opposed to eating either beans or rice individually. So combine them together to get the most benefit in your diet and get those amino acids that your body needs to function. Okay, and then as we discussed in the previous 2 slides ago, we talked about water in June and the importance of staying hydrated, especially during these very hot summer days with high humidity. Your body is probably going to need some extra water. The more you sweat, the more you need to replace water in your body by drinking water. Or 20% of your diet actually also could provide you with water, depending on if you're eating enough fruits and vegetables. So things like you know, watermelon, obviously, or cucumbers. Lots of foods have a high water content, and so your body can get approximately 20% of its daily intake from the food that you eat. All right, moving on to our garden topic, we're going to be talking about pollination. So pollination is the process by which we are able to reproduce and grow fruit. According to the University of Minnesota, 80% of flowering plants require bees or other animals for pollination. Just like humans, plants have reproductive parts. The stamen of the flower is sometimes referred to as the male part of the flower. So you can see an example on the left side of your screen, the male flower. This is, I believe, a zucchini or squash plant. And you can see the stamen is the part that's sticking out of the flower. It has the pollen on it, and that is the part that is needed for the bee to get the pollen on its legs or the fuzzy part of its body and carry it to the female flower. Okay, the ovule is often referred to as the female part of the flower. Some flowers contain both male and female parts within each flower. Other flowers are distinctly male or female and require cross-pollination. So on the right, you can see examples of the female flower. You can also tell a female flower because the fruit is attached to the base of it. And if this flower does not get pollinated by say, for example, a bee who has already been to the male flower and then comes over and pollinates, deposits the pollen onto the female flower. If that process doesn't happen, then this fruit is going to die. It's going to shrivel up, turn brown, and fall off because the plant doesn't want to waste its energy on growing fruit that hasn't been pollinated. So if you're finding that your plants are producing a lot of fruit, but then they are falling off and dying, you may have a pollination issue, which is unfortunately becoming more common. So sometimes the female part of the plant, the pistil, which is kind of the whole section of the female flower that includes stigma, that's where the pollen is deposited. The style is kind of the canal tract that carries the pollen down to the ovule, which is essentially like an ovary where the egg and the pollen fertilize, and then the fruit can grow. So those are some different types. The other way to know a male flower is there will be no fruit on the stem in contrast to the female flower. And then, like I said, some plants have it all parts contained within one flower. All right. All right. So a plant's main goal is to reproduce, as I mentioned. Thus, if the fruit of the plant is unfertilized and cannot produce seeds, the plant will reject it and not waste energy growing it. Other plants, like tomatoes, have both male and female parts within the same flower. Thus, all that is needed is for pollen from the male stamen to touch the female stigma where it can reach the ovule. So essentially, on a flower that contains both parts, it just needs a bee to kind of knock the pollen producing part of the flower into the ovule, the female part of the flower. So it just needs to kind of get shaken in there. And that can even happen through the wind or through a person, you know, touching it or bumping into it, or an animal bumping into it. So there's a lot of ways. So just a little fun fact for you. Did you know that the vibrations caused by the beating wings of a bee help shake the pollen down to the stigma for flowers containing both male and female parts? So the vibration of their wings is part of the process. So it's not just their fuzzy bodies, but also the beating of their wings. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is, we're talking on this slide about self-pollinating flowers. These are the flowers that contain both male and female parts in one. I chose a lily as an example because the flower is very large and you can easily see the parts of the flower. So once again, a self-pollinating flower is one that has both male and female reproductive parts, and it's contained within the one flower. Pollen from the stamen must fall onto the stigma for pollination to occur. And this, like I said, occurs through wind or animal or insect contact. And examples of self-pollinating flowers would be our tomatoes, green peppers, chili peppers, eggplant, green beans, sweet peas, peanuts, and more. In contrast, the plants with like the male and the female flowers included like cucumber, squash, zucchini, pumpkins. Those types of plants have the distinctly male and female flowers and need the cross-pollination. So you can see down at the bottom in the middle, there's a photo of a tomato flower that was not pollinated, and so the plant rejected it, and it's drying up and it's going to fall off so that it doesn't waste energy growing that flower because it's not going to produce fruit. Okay. So our climate change topic is connected to our pollination. We're talking about endangered pollinators. Did you know that there are so many creatures who assist in the process of pollination? Examples include bees and butterflies, of course, but also birds, some beetles, moths, bats, and even humans. You may have heard of the mass extinction of many insects that's impacting our environment in the past few years, particularly as it relates to honeybees. Honeybees are in danger of extinction, and it is impacting farms and gardens around the world, but particularly in the United States. One major factor in decreasing the bee population is our dependence upon pesticides to treat our crops. As industrialization increased our ability to produce mass amounts of food crops, farmers needed ways to prevent pest destruction and protect their crops from disease. Thus, companies like Monsanto created fertilizers and pesticides to increase crop production and protect it from pests. However, overuse of chemical pesticides and fertilizers have caused not only an increase in cancer for the people who consume these crops, but it also has killed off the beneficial pollinators like honeybees. In protecting plants from being attacked by aphids, cucumber beetles, or other pests, insecticides and pesticides are decimating our insect populations, polluting our groundwater, and poisoning our food. So as you can see, this chart on the bottom right is showing over the years, so the gray line on the graph is telling you what an acceptable winter loss would be for a beekeeper. And so every winter there are some bees that are expected to die. But then in the light orange, it's reporting the total winter loss. So that number has gone up significantly, almost doubled in most of these cases. And then the total annual loss is even higher than that. And you can see how it kind of peaked around 2012, 2013. And it did decrease a little bit within the last 5 years, but it is still much higher than it was in the early 2000s. And so this is a problem that we really need to address. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see main drivers of insect decline. So the largest group or percentage is intensive agriculture with pesticides and fertilizers. So that's what I just mentioned to you. The next highest is biological factors, including introduced species and pathogens. So that means when a bug from another part of the world is introduced into this climate, it's often called an invasive species. The same is true for plants. And that really impacts the whole ecosystem, including insects. Urbanization, so the process of people building cities and homes and expanding into wild areas, wildlife areas, that is another reason for the decrease in our insect population. And then as you can see, the smaller categories are the deforestation, wetlands and river alteration, and global warming is on there as well. All right, so what can we do? We are not powerless, and we can do something. So First, we must stop using chemicals on our gardens, lawns, and our food. This means implementing organic methods and avoiding any use of Miracle-Gro products or other chemical pesticides. If you see dead bees in your yard, talk to your neighbors. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to grab something right here. Just yesterday, I was out in my garden and I found a bee that I put in a little jar. It's a little honeybee, and unfortunately, it was lying dead on my basil plant, and I had heard some yard workers out in the neighborhood, and they had been working, and so my concern was that possibly somebody had their yard sprayed for bugs or bees or spiders, and ultimately this causes the bees to die, even though I'm trying to, grow vegetables and flowers and stuff. So my plan is to actually take my little bee in a jar and go to my neighbors and just talk to them about not spraying, and obviously be very kind about it. Some people have no idea that spraying is going to also kill the good bugs, the bees and such. So like I said, one thing you can do is talk to your neighbors and show them. Some people have no clue. So just show them that it is impacting the bees. And then another thing you can do is teach your neighbors. So when you go to their house, you're not just asking them not to use pesticides, but you can teach them organic methods of pest control. So one that we've talked about in the month of May in our workshop was using neem oil, and you only need about 1 teaspoon for 16 ounces of water, and then maybe 1 teaspoon as well of liquid dish soap, and that's going to help emulsify the oil in the water. And you shake it up and you spray it on your plants, and that's going to prevent aphids, cucumber beetles, and lots of plant diseases. I was able to get rid of some early blight by pinching off leaves and spraying my plants with neem oil. That was on my green beans. So we can show them alternatives, if people have no idea that there's another way. All right. So the second thing we can do is we really need to plant flowers that attract beneficial pollinators. You're going to have a better garden harvest if you have lots of flowers that attract pollinators in your yard. I actually noticed in my garden I did not have enough pollinators, and so I went out and I got some more flowers and or moved flowers from other parts of my yard closer to the vegetable garden. And this is going to help increase the habitat for the bees and the pollinators to live in. So examples of flowers that attract pollinators include lavender, bachelor buttons, cosmos, milkweed, coneflower, asters, yarrow, fennel, and cilantro. There's many more, but hollyhock, geraniums, and so many more. You just do a Google search of flowers that attract pollinators, and you'll find plenty of options that should work for your climate. Another thing you can do is either build or purchase a mason bee house. So you can see the little wooden house that looks like a birdhouse, except it has all these little holes in it. So that is a type of house that mason bees use, and they're excellent pollinators, but they don't build a hive like honeybees. They prefer to have like a solitary hole that they live in. The same is true for carpenter bees, though carpenter bees are a little larger. And this will hopefully help divert them from building a home in your house and building it in something that's easily accessible like the mason bee house. And you want to locate it somewhere near your garden and near dirt, because they use the dirt to kind of seal off the hole when they lay an egg. So So that's that part. And then finally, putting a bird bath and having a water source in your yard is really important, because I've noticed maybe even more than birds in my bird bath, I'm seeing bees and wasps and different bugs that will sit on the edge of the bird bath and drink the water, especially on these hot days. So if you kind of combine the mason bee house, the pollinating flowers, and the water source for within your garden space, then you're going to be more likely to attract the beneficial pollinators. Finally, if your plants need some help with pollination and you still aren't seeing very many bees, insects, or birds to pollinate your plants, you can hand pollinate your flowers. Simply find a male flower, pluck it, and touch the stamen to the ovule of the female flower. Make sure that you see the pollen transfer. Or you can use a clean paintbrush, as you see in the photo here, and gently brush the pollen from the male flower onto the female flower. Male flowers do not produce fruit, so it's okay to pluck them for the sake of pollinating your female flowers. So as you can see, this is a type of cucumber vine, and the male flower does not have, it has a small bulge here, but that's part of the flower. But the female, you can actually see part of the fruit that's starting to grow. So you're going to want to rub the paintbrush and get pollen on the paintbrush from this flower, and then transfer it to the female flower, and hopefully that will help it to not die off, and it will actually grow into fruit that you can eat. So for the flowers that contain both male and female parts, such as our tomato plants, you can simply take the paintbrush and lightly transfer pollen, just kind of tickle around on the flower and help shake that pollen into the ovule receptor. And we can create a separate video for this on our YouTube channel, just a short, brief video on how to pollinate, hand pollinate. Right. So finally, announcements. Please contact your coordinator through text, phone call, or email, and let them know that you've completed watching this video. This is how we record your attendance, and it's really important for us to know who's watching and who's benefiting from our program, so that we continue to receive funding and provide you the resources to do organic gardening. I also encourage you to have your children, your family, to help you in the garden, to share the knowledge, share the produce. If you ever end up with too many zucchinis or too many things, too many of your fruits to harvest, then we encourage sharing or trading within your community, and just really having a reciprocal relationship and sharing our harvest. If you're having any garden issues, or you would like to schedule a home visit, this is for current home garden participants or graduates, please call or schedule an appointment with your coordinator. You can also reach out via our info email at valleyverde.com and .org. And also, we'd love to see photos of progress of your garden, just showing us, what's growing, what's doing well. We use this information to inform which plants we choose the following season. And so if you send us photos and send us information on what's working well and maybe what didn't work so well, we will definitely use that information to make the program better the following year. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new, and please be sure to contact your coordinators.